Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild player class, Gunslinger Class Revised, designed by Stratos Fotakis for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, and Rivzung, and gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcos de Vicente, Gilberto, Sean A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. Despite growing up and spending most of my life in Texas in the U.S., I don't actually have a whole lot of affinity or love for guns in the real world. If you follow me on social media, you can probably extrapolate what my thoughts and feelings are regarding guns in this country and in general. But, having said that, I grew up with 80s and 90s movies. I love cowboy films and stories, pirates, and I'm a big video game fan. Love games. I mean, there's a whole genre of games. It's just you with a floating gun as your main tool for interacting with the world, and those games are super fun. So, in a fantastical role-playing context, I think guns are super cool. I want to make that clear. In a fantastical role-playing situation, I think guns are super cool. To where if there's some kind of like steampunk or arcane punk setting that offers guns as a weapon, or like a MOBA or something that's got different weapon styles like a sword, a warhammer, whatever, if there's somebody wielding like dual pistols or a sniper rifle or something, I think that character is one of the ones I'm going after first, because that always just appeals to me right off the bat. So a gun wielding class for D&D has a lot of appeal for me. Now, there are rules for guns in the Dungeon Master's Guide as kind of alternative rules, so they laid down the seeds. What this does is provide a full-on level 1 through 20 player class, all set up with multiple archetypes and firearms built in. Really everything you need to play a true player class who focuses on guns. And the tricky thing here is, how do you balance guns against like bow and arrow and stuff? And I think the right way to do it is you have to make them rare. Obviously you have to be very skilled to use them. Ammunition is tough to use, and you have to introduce a reloading and a misfire mechanisms, which this absolutely does, and I think it does pretty well. So I'm very positive on what this offers, Gunslinger Class Revised. Really great layout, pretty much lifted exactly from how the player's handbook is presented in the official Wizards of the Coast published material. It even has the tables, or the font, the formats, the quick build, the fact that the intro is basically three different stories of different archetypes of gunslingers that tell little stories about these characters that are gunslingers. All of that is really, really cool. Now, I've said before, no designer should feel pressured to just copy and paste the exact formatting used from the official material. It's not necessarily what I'm looking for. That's not like a box I'm checking in my head or anything. But it is a great model to use for your custom content. It works really well for a reason. It fits very nicely. And if I can read this and it looks like something that would literally come out of the player's handbook, especially for like rule supplements or player material and that kind of thing, it just works really well and looks very, very nice. So I always give a thumbs up to that. Also, really good artwork, cover art, and there's a little bit of artwork throughout, which is nice to see. So the Gunslinger, as I said, is levels 1 through 20. It is mainly a dexterity class, obviously built around guns. I do appreciate that intelligence is the second highest stat. There's been a couple classes now that I've reviewed, usually ranger-style classes, that actually use intelligence, which is great, because as I've said multiple times in previous reviews, intelligence is often a dump stat for most classes, because only really the wizard and those that feel like they want to be kind of skill monkeys really need intelligence. No, it's kind of undervalued in 5th edition compared to like wisdom and even charisma and other stats. So it's nice to see intelligence being used here. At level 1, first of all, you get to start with a gun, although it's a pretty crappy one, the palm pistol. But you can learn how to forge your own weapon and ammunition. Now, one of my few complaints about this class is that whole forging your own weapon thing and ammunition is not really given any kind of rules whatsoever, which is a big bummer because I think that should have been at least give me a guide. It literally says the DM must determine whether an item can be crafted, what materials are required, and how long it will take to make. Well, that's such a cop-out. Like, don't leave all of that up to the DM. You're introducing this whole new concept. Yes, I know some of this material is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but if you're going to give me a gunslinger class, then I want you to spell out exactly what it takes to craft one of these guns, especially because that is a ability that the level 1 gunslinger has, the ability to forge their own firearm. So automatically that player is going to be like, okay, what do I need to be able to make some cool guns in the future? Because if you see on this table, I know my webcam is kind of blocking part of it, some of the cooler guns cost thousands of gold pieces. So this is like an overarching thing for the gunslinger to go after. It's neat, but I would have really liked to see some firmer rules, or at least some kind of vague guideline, and then I as the DM can choose whether I want to use them or not, or alter the numbers and the stats somewhat, but at least give me an idea of like, okay, what does it actually take to forge weapons and ammo, because they're definitely going to need ammo. These are not things you can normally buy at any kind of merchant stand, even a magical merchant stand. One of the coolest things that the gunslinger gets is calibrated shots, which are, formidable marksman. So at 2nd level, you can start to perform these shots. These are very similar to the fighter maneuvers. However, the fighter is, is it the champion that gets it? Or no, it's the battle master. Excuse me, the fighter battle master gets the maneuvers, which allows them to choose from multiple different cool specialized attacks that use a certain resource. This one is very, very similar. However, it's baked into the gunslinger themselves and not a archetype. So every single gunslinger, as early as 2nd level, gets to take advantage of these cool trick shots. And that's very fun and very thematic, because when I think of gunslingers, I specifically think of very fancy trick shots, capable of twirling their guns around and firing, disarming people with a shot, or shooting, in the foot, making them dance, that whole thing. Like, that is exactly how I picture what a gunslinger should be capable of. So you get to choose 2 from a lot of these different, and there is a disarming shot in there, a penetrating shot where you can literally blast. It's very video game, and you can like blast a line through different people. There's like silence shots. You can silence people, or you can muffle your shot, so you can try to do like a silenced blow. You can try to trip them. There's a lot of really cool. One of my favorites, I think, is a what is it called? Retroactive shot. You can actually use a reaction to hit somebody that tries to hit you. Now, instead of getting a set amount of dice that you can expend, you get bluster points, which is a dumb name, I admit. But you gain them equal to your intelligence modifier, which is cool. I love that it scales off intelligence. That gives incentive for gunslingers to build their intelligence up. And I like that it's thematic too, because you're literally using your mind to track all these shots and everything. But you actually regain them. You do regain them on a short or long rest, but you can also regain them each time you roll a natural crit, and each time you reduce a creature to 0 hit points. So that is really cool. So it's baked into the fact that you will have less of these than you would the fighter ones, because the fighter, I think, just gives you a flat 4 dice, I believe. So this one, unless you have a 20 intelligence for a gunslinger, which is going to be pretty rare, or an 18, I guess, for a 4, you're not going to have as many, but you have a chance to regain them more often, which is really cool. And I love that you can get it back on a crit, or if you reduce an opponent to 0. That's really cool. And you get it pretty early at 2nd level. You get these trick shots. So that's really neat. You also get, of course, your archetype at 3rd level. Folks, the gunslinger comes with 7 archetypes, which is nuts. When we get into it, I'm going to have a little bit of a complaint about the archetypes, but it's almost trivial because we get so many that there's more than enough for everybody, even if some of them are a little samey and maybe aren't the most original, but that's kind of balanced by the fact that we're given way more than archetypes than usual, even including, like, once you add Xanathars into the base class is from the player's handbook. That's a lot. So that's really cool to see. Otherwise, it's pretty standard stuff. The ASI, of course, at 4th and 8th, etc. Extra attack at 5th level, which this is important because Guns are balanced to where they have to be reloaded, and reloading takes either an action or an attack, which means once you gain 5th level and get that extra attack, you can then technically shoot and reload. That allows you to just shoot once every round instead of everybody else who's shooting twice a round. So it almost swings a little bit too much the other way in maybe overbalancing the guns, which I think is impressive, because a lot of times the tendency when you create a new class is to create one that's a little bit overpowered, because you have a tendency, you want to make your class sexy and cool, like it's, you want to make it fun and interesting to play, and it's very hard to balance that in line with the other classes, especially when you're using this whole new weapon style. And I think this one might go just a little bit overboard in the fact that most of the guns are actually reload 1, which means you can only shoot with them once. Now the standard, and including the gun you get, which I picture as one of those small, like what do you call them, Dillinger, like almost like Assassin's Creed style, like gun that pops out of your wrist or something. It's just got the one shot in there. The standard pistol does have a reload of 4, which is a little bit nicer. You can get a more of a revolver called a pepper box, reload 6. So definitely picture like gunpowder age guns here. You're not obviously getting Glocks and things of that nature. So the reload mechanic is there for balance purposes. There's also a misfire mechanic, which means if you roll too low, basically a crit fail, although that number can scale a little bit higher with the more fancier guns, then your gun jams, and then you have to actually spend a full action repairing that weapon. Although as you level up, you'll have more abilities, for example, letting you repair that gun on a bonus action, and then eventually letting you like unjam your gun as a free action where it really doesn't even matter anymore. And same thing with reloading. Eventually you can reload as a bonus action and then reload as like a free action. So that kind of allows you to scale up in your own class very, very well. It does copy and paste a few different traits from different classes, which I think is fine, and that's easy to balance. So they gain evasion at 7th level, for example, expertise at 6th level. The cool ones are the ones that are very thematic to the gunslinger. So swift draw, when you reach 6th level, you can add your intelligence bonus to your initiative. Obviously, that's feels like you should add your dex bonus, but obviously dex is already added into initiative, so I like the fact that they get a little bit of a boost, and it draws from intelligence, which should already be your high secondary stat, because that's what all your calibrated shots are based off of. Rapid reload, that's the one where you can reload any firearm as a bonus action starting at 10th level, so that allows you to, it's almost like getting extra attack again at that point. Signature firearm is probably my favorite ability you get at 11th level. You can spend 8 hours using your tools on one firearm to improve the firearm's mechanism and etching unique patterns and markings onto it. So you get like a signature weapon. The weapon deals an additional 1d6 damage of its damage type, which it's just neat. Like it's neat from a role-playing standpoint. You can have your special blunderbuss that you name, or you can draw designs on everything. I'm picturing Red Dead Redemption, where you can have all the fancy, you can color the grip, whatever, and put emblazoned, etchings on it and everything. That's really neat, and I like seeing that. So that's pretty cool. The only thing that's a little bit disappointing is the actual level 20 capstone exemplary gunner. Basically just lets you improve your firearm even further. You get an additional 1d6 on top of that. You do get to reload your firearms as a free action, so basically just eliminates reloading once and for all. But it's just not quite the sexiest, crazy, like 20th level capstone. Alright, so archetypes, 7 of them. That is a bunch. That's the good news. The bad news is 4 of the 7 archetypes are basically just soft multi-classing hybrids. The Arcane Gunner is a Wizard hybrid. The Gun Templar is a Cleric/Paladin hybrid. I guess really more of a Paladin hybrid. The Jaeger is a Ranger hybrid. And the Soul Hunter is a Warlock hybrid. And when I say hybrid, I mean it literally just borrows the spell table and a few of the abilities exactly from those classes. Although in this case, for example, the Arcane, let's see, what was it called? The Arcane Gunner actually has the Divine Smite ability from the Paladin, which is called Arcane Shot, which that's really powerful. You can, at 7th level, start expending spell slots to basically do the Divine Smite as force damage. And then at 13th level, this ability is actually, that might be the only one that really caused me to go, whoa, that's crazy. When you see a creature casting a spell within 60 feet of you, you can make a ranged attack as a reaction to try to fire at it. And if you do, the spell fails, which is pretty damn powerful. You can just do it as a reaction to cause an enemy to fail, essentially giving you a counter spell that doesn't allow a save, It's just an attack roll from you. And at 13th level, I imagine your attack is probably pretty good at that point. The non-spell hybrid ones, Close Quarters Gunner, lets you gain medium armor and a shield and allow you to be better at wielding a melee weapon along with a pistol or whatever ranged weapon you have. The Skirmisher, meanwhile, lets you dual wield guns better, or single weapon guns. Essentially, it's more of a fighter rogue hybrid. And then the Sniper, probably the more interesting because it allows you to specifically like drop down into prone and gain advantage, get a little faster about getting into different areas, using your reaction to mark somebody, all these kind of things. So those I think are a little better because they're a little more inventive and interesting and more thematic with what I picture the Gunslinger, whereas the others are basically just, hey, do you want to do some Warlock spells or do you want to do some Paladin spells and that kind of thing. So it's tough to complain about that because we get so many here, but I was a little disappointed that so many of them are basically just soft multi-classes with those other classes. And what's funny is, yes, the Ranger one, the Jaeger, is probably the weakest one of the bunch. I mean, taking a search action as a bonus action, come on now, don't do that. I do like being able to dash and then making a firearm attack as a bonus action, though. That's actually kind of cool. The other cool thing this player class supplement adds and gives us is magic items. So obviously, guns aren't really a thing in D&D, although again you can find some in the DM's guild, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then there was a table at the beginning that showed kind of the basic weapons. Well, if you want to give your poor gunslinger a magic weapon because everybody else is getting magic weapons, this one provides 8 new magic weapons, which is pretty cool. And they run the gamut from pretty basic magic to where a double barrel pistol is basically just a pistol that can fire twice, all the way up to a legendary despair giant hellish flame spewing blunderbuss, which is pretty cool. As it screams of agony, everybody has to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened as it fires out like this freaking Ghost Rider gun or something. It was a pretty cool ad. I think that's really neat. Just kind of a bonus that we get all these magic weapons because again you're using very specific items that don't have magic weapon equivalents yet. So I think that's really cool to see. So let's go over my pros and cons for the Gunslinger class. Pro, it's got fun thematic abilities like signature firearms, steady aim, and swift draw. A few of them are copy and pasted from levels 1 through 20, but for the most part I think there are some really cool abilities in there. And my other pro, for abilities, the Calibrated Shot specifically make each gunslinger a unique marksman. Marksperson? Probably marksperson. Marksperson sounds weird. But I like the fact that it's baked in early on, and the fact that every gunslinger can choose, and it is like the Battle Master maneuvers where you gain more as you level up. So you're doing all these really cool trick shots left and right. I think that is like the cornerstone of the class, which makes it unique. Makes it so you're not just using a fancy bow, but you're actually doing cool trick shots with your guns, which is what exactly a gunslinger should be. Pro, 7 gunslinger archetypes provide a wide range of specializations. I do like the number that we get. And pro, 8 interesting new magic guns. That's pretty cool. We get a whole appendix of magical items specifically for the gunslinger. Cons, as I mentioned, 4 of the 7 archetypes are hybrid spellcasters that basically amount to soft multi-classes. They're not necessarily bad. The ranger one's kind of lame. But it's just not quite as interesting as the other ones. And con, I didn't like that it leaves firearm forging and ammo crafting completely up to the DM. I would have liked to see some kind of rules there, or tables, or at least a guideline or idea. Otherwise, the DM, I mean, this is a completely different thing you're asking me to try to figure out, and that is something the gunslinger is absolutely going to want to figure out. It's like, how can I make my guns and bullets and immediately increase my awesomeness? Like, well, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. Verdict, Gunslinger Class Revised is the perfect implementation of a gun-focused character class with fun thematic abilities and over half a dozen archetypes. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.